Bachmann's Class 55 Deltics were fine models in their day and have been the definitive Class 55 models for many years. With Accurascale's Class 55 announcement, it was clear that leadership position was going to be under serious threat. Accurascale still had to deliver, and deliver they have done, in spades. Thanks for joining today's review. As well as covering 3 of the new Accurascale models in this review, I will also be comparing them to their Bachmann predecessors. As such, this is going to be a longer review than normal, so you may want to take a few sections at a time. We'll kick off with the usual unboxing of one of the new models from Accurascale, followed by close-up views of 3 representative models from the new range. Following this, we'll do a comparison with some of my existing Bachmann Class 55 models. We'll then get into a brief running session, followed by a summary, scoring and final recommendation. For the scoring, we will also do a relative scoring versus the Bachmann Class 55, so let's get into it. Okay, so welcome to the unboxing. So this arrived this morning. I haven't opened it yet, so you're going to get the first reactions that I have to this as we go through the process here. So it's an enormous box. That's the first, I suppose, reaction. And probably not surprisingly, it is pretty heavy as well. It's got the nice outer cover, so we'll just take that off first. And we'll start getting into it pretty quickly. So here we go. We've got the nice inner box with a nice graphic of the Deltic on the outside. Okay, so when you take the top off the box, this is what we've got. We've got this sheet, opening sheet, which kind of looks, I suppose, like a maintenance type sheet, a breakout of the parts, which is always useful, and that'll be very handy with some reference to part numbers as well. And then we've got operation and maintenance guide, which talks about a few things in terms of maintenance, wheel cleaning, lubrication and general care. I guess what I don't see in this is I don't see any discussion regarding opening the body, but let's maybe come back to that one. It's certainly not covered here. Okay, so we'll return to that. Okay, so next up we've got a booklet which looks very similar to the booklet that was produced for the Irish A-Class. And that was a booklet that kind of gave some background on the prototype, the real-life locomotive, and talked about the history, etc., its service history, all that kind of thing. And this looks to be very similar, so that'll be a nice little piece of bedtime reading to have on this. And just looking through it, so the last item, and again, this is similar to what was done for the A-Class. They've got the functions for the DCC control here, for your sound control, if you do have a DCC sound controller, and they're called out in here. So again, we'll take a look at that a little bit later on. The next piece of material looks to be the head codes, actually. Now, it's always interesting because you can go and you can look these up online, but it is very handy that they're giving them to you here, and they're giving them to you with the specific train configurations. They're giving you the head codes for those different trains in both the up and down direction, which is actually very, very handy. So that's actually quite neat to get that. And obviously then you've got the kind of dummy pieces here and the domino pieces when they weren't using the head codes. So very useful to get that, and the reference in particular. You can go searching for that online, but it's handy to get it out of the box. Okay. So let's go to the model itself. Okay, so there's a nice thick foam piece on the outside, so we'll take that off. And I suppose very dapple-like, it's kind of sitting, again, surrounded by foam, but quite thick foam. And I guess I'm already getting a first look at the model, and it does look very impressive. So we'll take this guy out and see where we go. So it's a pretty sturdy box, so we'll get that out of the way. So let's see what we've got here. So we've got our model, and we are going to take a look at it's the standard kind of ice cube type packaging, I guess, at this level. It doesn't kind of have the extra, pieces of foam that you get on the dapole models at either end. No, I think that's kind of useful because that does give an extra. This sort of plastic can kind of break, particularly with age. It does age, so I think what dapole do is kind of useful, but never mind, we'll get into that later. So it's got a nice covering on the outside to protect the paintwork, so I do always like that. And oh boy, this is kind of heavy, actually physically heavy to take out, so you just want to be careful. So we're going to put her on her side here so you get a look, and we might just do a bit of a zoom in as well so you can get a bit closer. So I guess the first impressions are of a really, really nice detailed model. Now I've only seen these in photograph form, and there's our front of the model. This is really heavy. I'd be interesting to weigh this now, what sort of weight I'm going to get. You've got this really interesting chain, which I've seen in some of the photographs, connecting the bogie to the body. Now, it looks great as a piece of detail, but I'm kind of worried about something like that from a catching perspective, perhaps when you're running. So you see it there. So we'll see that later on. I'm not sure whether these are meant to run on radius 2. I kind of doubt it. I wouldn't be trying them on radius 2. I think radius 3 and onwards is probably where I'd go. And certainly with something like that, that could be problematic. So it's fantastic detail, but I guess it's just could be a little bit problematic. The whole engine detail in here is fantastic. We'll be doing the normal close-ups on this in 360s as well. So I'm really just picking off a few things here as I look at it in the hand. The underbody detail is incredible. Weight is incredible. If anything, I'd nearly say it's too heavy. There's a little chain is caught on the inside there now, so you wouldn't want that happening. So there we go. We'll pop them out. There's kind of layered detail on those bogies, which is really nice. Glazing is crisp as you'll get. I like the kind of door area there. I love the engine area. It really looks good. And I think that should be illuminated, so we'll see that later on. This is a full DCC sound model, so I made the decision that if you're going to go with this, a model like this, opening the body can be perilous sometimes, in terms of potential damage. So I said, let's get it all in, and usually it's a lot more expensive to add the sound afterwards anyway, so it's a much better deal. So that's what I went with. Now, there is fantastic cab detail. I can just kind of see bits of it in there. We will take some photos of that later on when we get it, the next level of view on it. Really, this does look absolutely spectacular, is all I can say. The roof detail looks really good. You can see the fans there, 4 of them. There's 2 engines, of course. Got the chimneys. And look at the underbody here. My goodness, look at that. I don't think I've ever seen an underbody like that on a locomotive. Okay, so looking very, very impressive. Just looking at the wheels, I wonder, does that need a little bit of a clean before they go on? I do find, and I found this with a lot of the Bachmann locomotives, is it's actually you need to give a bit of a clean to the wheels before you run them, because they come from the factory with some residue, some dirt on them, whatever, overspray of chemicals, etc. So there's something on there. So we might give them a little bit of a wipe with something. But I'll be putting this on a rolling road under DC first. That's kind of how I'll run her in, and then we'll go from there. Now she's got nice sprung buffers, and the nice horns, the nice wipers. So I have 3 of these on order. This is the first one that's arrived for me, the Royal Scots Grey, 55-2022. So it really looks good in the hand, and boy, it is heavy. My goodness, it's like doing a bit of a weightlifting session with this. So let's put them down there, and we'll just see what else we got here in terms of a detailing kit, and then we'll move on. So we get the etched nameplates, which is nice, and kind of a crest there to add, and some pretty small amount of detailing parts, which kind of doesn't surprise me because there's a massive amount of detail on the body itself. So it really does look phenomenal. I guess the other thing, it doesn't have the drivers installed. You do have these drivers that have been advertised by Accurascale. I've actually ordered a couple of them. I thought they might arrive by now. I guess the one thing I'm not looking forward to is opening the model to add them. And it is not really, it just doesn't look like a model that facilitates the easy addition of drivers, I'll put it that way. And it's a little bit of a bugbear of mine that it would be nice to get good quality drivers pre-installed. Well, some of the Bachmann have drivers on most of the locomotives. The quality of the driver isn't always great. For a model like this, it would have been nice to have got the drivers pre-installed, because as I say, quite fancy looking at opening the model. It looks absolutely amazing, and we'll get it out on the track. We'll do the close-up view on it, we'll do a 360 view on it, and I'll get her run in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she performs. I'll say those chains are probably the only little thing that give me a little niggle about running on the track, and we'll just see how they go. I don't see anything else that's going to maybe get in the way there. But I say I won't be running this on anything less than radius 3 anyway, and I think we should probably be okay with that. Okay, it's my first experience of the Accurascale Class 55 Deltic. It lives up to all my expectations, and it's heavier than I thought it might be, but visually, detail-wise, all of that is in keeping with my expectations, and I think I'm really looking forward to hearing the sound on this as well when we get it on the track, because I think that's going to be kind of special as well. But magnificent looking model, and I guess it's been worth waiting for, and looking forward to the other two models, which are in slightly different liveries, different styling. So looking forward to those as well, because they'll have their own kind of personality, I guess, from the particular livery they have. But this starting out looks really good. Okay, let's go to the next part of the review. Okay, so now we're going to get into the close-up view. So we're going to start with the model we've just been doing the unboxing with, the 55022 Royal Scots Grey. And I think the things to look at here are the level of detail on the bogie, including the chains there that you can see, the underbody detail in general, the engine area detail, and then the cab detail. We won't get a good look at that here. We'll see that in other views. I think you can see the fantastic level of underbody detail there, and it's pretty spectacular. And it does stand out quite significantly over the Bachmann models, and we'll do a comparison on that later on. You can see the fantastic detail in the engine room, and I think that really is a very nice feature of these models. It really does add to the models significantly. Usually the engine area is kind of an afterthought. I think the only question mark on this particular model is the roof, and the Bachmann version of this did have a silver roof, but prototypically this grey roof is what it should be. In truth, you may have seen the pre-painted models of this did have a silver roof as well, and I was attracted to that particular incarnation of the model, albeit it's not prototypical. So I guess that's where the reality is, it doesn't quite meet with what looks the best, I suppose. So we'll talk about that one a little bit later on. Here's a 360 view now of the model, and again you can see the grey roof that's on there. And as I said, the Bachmann version of this does have an actual silver roof, which I think actually does look a little bit better. But it's an absolutely fantastic model overall. You can see the sprung buffers at the front there. There's a superb cab detail. The glazing is really, really good. And the engine detail we've talked about already as well. One comment I'd make, I guess, regarding the bogies is that the feel of the bogies is of not being fantastically strong. I'm not sure whether they've been printed. They just don't have a strong kind of robust feel to them, and I would be concerned about them in terms of just looking after them. So that's just something to note, and you'll certainly notice that in the hand, and relative to the weight of the model as well. Now we're going to take a very quick look at the 9020 Nimbus, which is in the two-tone livery, the green two-tone livery, and again the same characteristics in terms of the underbody detail there, the engine room detail. The bogie is not as probably as spectacular on this particular model, but this is following the prototypes, and you can see the nice red seat there in the engine area, and obviously all the engine detail, which is really, really good. Got the front views on this now as well, and you can see the lovely wipers there. You can see a little bit of the cab detail here. It's got the nice white painted cockpit area, which I think is quite nice, and it's nice on the blue models as well. And it also has the chains, obviously. So again, a really, really nice model, quite spectacular. This is one of my favorites, and again, I'll do a comparison to its Bachmann, one of its Bachmann's equivalents. I don't have the Nimbus, but I do have the Pinza, and we'll do a comparison against that a little bit later on. So overall, really nice looking model there. Now this one is a special edition from Rails. It's 55015 Tulliar. Again, all the same characteristics. Again, this one does have the white painted cockpit area, and again the fantastic underbody detail, and similar bogie detail to 55022, and the chains again there you can see at the front. So again, a really nice looking model, and here we get the 360 view of the model. I actually really do like those white cockpit area, and also the nicely painted rims for the front windows there, the riveted windows, which is a very nice detail. You don't quite see it on the side-on view, but you do see it here, and I do like that. It does stand out quite a bit on this particular model. It doesn't quite come out on 5522 because it doesn't have the painting on that area. So very, very nice model, special edition from Rails of Sheffield, and I was kind of pretty pleased I picked this one up because it kind of rounds off the three models that I purchased. So now we're going to do a comparison against some existing Bachmann models, and the first one here, and I don't have direct comparisons because I did buy different numbers. The first one here is this Class 55 from Deltic, the St. Paddy 55001, the original of the species. I think the main point I'd make here is that for the upper body area, the Bachmanns aren't actually that bad, apart from the fact that the engine area and the cab areas aren't as good. But you can see the lack of detail in the underbody there. It's all moulded. There's really nothing called out from a painting perspective. And it's the same with the bogies. And you also got that really unattractive copper and solder look in the bogie area, which is just, on a whole load of Bachmann models is terrible. This view actually, it doesn't show up too badly, because I think the upper body of the Bachmann is nicely delivered. It's a nice moulding with a good level of detail, and it's a nice paint job, and the glazing is also quite good. So I think in general what the take from this is that the Bachmanns are not bad models. They're not bad runners either, and while the new Accurascale models are pretty spectacular in terms of the additional detail that they provide, the Bachmann models still kind of stand up to a degree. They don't stand as premium models anymore, but they are not bad models, and I think I'll talk about that later on in the summary section. So now we've got the Pinza from Bachmann. Again, you can see the copper underneath there. It's terrible through the bogie area there, and again the same thing, the lack of detail in the underbody. It's just molded parts. It's just the only thing it has is the fuel gauge. And similarly the bogie areas. Now the bogies do feel quite robust. They feel more robust on these Bachmann models than they do on the Accurascale models. So that's just a point to note. And again, the upper body is not bad. It's a nice paint job. It's a nice rendering. Again, it's the nice white paintwork around the cockpit area. So this is not a bad model, and it's been one of my favorites, to be honest. I was really like this Class 55 from Bachmann. It has been one of my favorite models, I guess, until now. Again, when you look at the two of them kind of side by side like this, you can see the added detail on the Accurascale model. There's no doubt about that. It just has a better feel to it on the track. But again, the Bachmann model is not that bad. It's over 10 years old now. It doesn't stand up too badly here. Interestingly, they have the same headcode numbers on them, 1A35. It's not a bad comparison from a Bachmann perspective. And here we're going to kind of look at the two of them right beside each other. Now this will just be static, so we can kind of compare them a little bit closer. And again, you can see the upper body stands up well, apart from the engine area, apart from the cockpit. The Bachmann does have a driver, of course, pre-installed. Now, not always the best drivers, like from just a perspective of the actual look of the drivers. They can look a little bit cheap on the Bachmann models, but they're there. You've no driver obviously in this particular model from Accurascale. I'm still waiting for my drivers to come. Got the chains there again, so you can see that difference. Again, the bogies aren't significantly different here because there isn't a lot of the extra painted detail on these particular bogies, but there still are obviously a more detailed bogie. But again, they do feel a little bit more robust on the Bachmann. Now there's a couple of models that aren't part of the Accurascale range, and one of them is the DP1, which we have here, the weathered edition of it, again limited edition for the National Railway Museum. So we don't have an equivalent Accurascale version of this. I really would have loved if there was one. It would be spectacular. And also Bachmann did do weathered versions of a number of their models. This is just one example here. Again, this was a special edition done for the Deltic Preservation Society. And it's a factory weathered model, so you can see it's good overall coverage. And I guess if you do weather the Accurascale models, particularly in the underbody area, you'll kind of blank out a lot of that detail that you see in them. It'll literally be all weathered out. And similarly on the bogies. So it kind of probably is a little bit of a leveling effect if you weather the Accurascale model in terms of its relativity to the Bachmann model. And I think there isn't equivalence for these, and I think for people who might be a little bit reluctant to weather their Accurascale model, like I'm probably going to hang on to this for a little while longer because it gives me a weathered Deltic in my fleet.
Okay, so let's get into the running session. So we're going to kick off here with 55022, the Royal Scots Grey. Now we're going to have the sound turned down considerably because it is quite loud in the course of this running session, and really what we want to focus on is the performance. The running session is available as a separate video, so I have that in a link to that in the description if you haven't seen that already, and that will give you a feel for the actual sound and obviously give you a full, slightly longer running session as well. So very smooth start. This is pretty well run in. I did have to run it in over DCC. You don't get the DC blanking plate with the model. So if you get the sound equipped model, for example, I had hoped to run this in under DC on the rolling road, but without the plate, I wasn't going to do that. I didn't want to try out a separate plate. Usually these plates are pretty generic, but I didn't want to bother trying that given it is a new model, so I didn't really want to play with anything. So I did run it in under DCC before this, and I did notice a kind of a smoothing out, I guess. You kind of always hear little noises and stuff like that when you start a model straight out of the box. But that said, this did a really smooth crawl straight out of the box. But you do need to run it in and kind of at the kind of normal speeds, and then kind of slowly ramp it up. So it's running really well here, and I ran it all the way up to the maximum speed for the default settings, which was 109 miles per hour scale speed with full power. And you can get more than that because the CV5 setting is still only set at 200, so if you tune that up you should be able to get a little bit more top speed, and it is rated to run at up to 120 miles per hour scale speed. So we're slowing down now, and really didn't have any problems with this. Ran it here in the running session on radius 3. I have done some running on radius 2, and that's where I did see the tightness on the chains. We're slowing down now, and so this is a good crawler of a locomotive, not understandably given the specification it has. Coming to a very nice slow stop here, and we'll just finish it there. So a very satisfactory running session, a lot of pulling power, a lot of good performance, and really very few problems or no problems over point work or anything like that.
Okay, so let's get into the summary. So first off here we have a listing of the 2022 range of Class 55s from Accurascale, and there's 17 in total, a combination in the BR blue livery and the two-tone green livery, and a number of options that would have the white painted cockpit on them. And there is one option here which is in the purple livery. You'll see that down there, which is again the Porterbrook purple, which is the Gordon Highlander, kind of standing out. So it's kind of three main liveries with some variations within each of those. We don't have the DP1 or DP2 in here, and there's no weathered option. These are all pristine liveries. So 17 in total, but it's a great selection for a single release of a particular model. I think this is a very comprehensive number of variants on a first release of a model like this. So well done to Accurascale for that. Getting into the summary of capabilities, so it comes in this very heavy die-cast alloy metal chassis, which gives it the weight. There's a lot of separately applied either etched metal or high-fidelity plastic pieces across the model, and a lot of that particularly in the lower body area. It's got mini tension lock couplers with NEM pockets, so you can swap the couplers if you wish. Comes with a 5-pole motor with 2 flywheels, and it's got all-wheel drive, all-wheel pickup as you would expect. And it's got a gearbox which optimized for low speed running, but should also be geared to allow you to get the kind of maximum prototypical scale speed of this model, which goes all the way up to 120 miles per hour, which is quite a speed for a diesel locomotive like this. You've got some stay alive capacitors in there as well to just optimize the running performance, going over things like insufraud points, etc. Comes with a very detailed and comprehensive lighting pack, probably the most comprehensive I've ever seen in a locomotive ever. You've got the directional lighting, which includes things like the train mode operation. You've got the high intensity headlights, not on all the models, it's only on certain models. You've got the cab lighting on both ends. You've got illuminated driver's console, which is very good, and the engine bay lighting. You've got provision for regaging, so some people may be particularly interested in this, so that's a nice option to have. You've got 2 quality speakers with their corresponding sound capsules. Now, this is only on the sound-fitted models, which is kind of a little bit of a pity, because you've got this very nice capability for adding DCC, but if you're going to add DCC sound, you're going to have to open up the model physically, which is a pity. Comes with fully sprung metal buffers, and it's certified for a radius 2 as a minimum. However, my experience with those chains on the bogies, I really wouldn't recommend running this thing, certainly at any sort of speed on a radius 2 curve. I only intend to run this on radius 3, radius 4 to be honest, and would be interested in feedback from people if you've seen any issues with these chains running on the smaller radii, but certainly I don't quite think I'd go with a radius 2 for this model. The unbox weight, 810 grams, one of the heaviest locomotives I've ever tested, sits up there in the kind of Hellion weight category, a very substantial weighted model, and obviously that assists in terms of things like the running performance and getting good connectivity with the track. Top speed that I measured during the course of this review was 109 miles per hour scale speed. That's 100% power, 250 milliamp peak current, and that was with the default CV5 setting of 200. So there is headroom there on the CV5 setting, and I guess that's what's going to get you up over the 120 miles per hour scale speed. And I didn't go through that in this particular test, I just used the default numbers that came out of the box. It comes in 2 forms, 21-pin DCC ready, £160, or DCC sound fitted for £250. Now those are the prices as of July 2022, and I kind of suspect if they do a rerun of this model that those prices will creep up a little bit. So let's get into the scoring. So the running performance, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 with a little double asterisk on it, and that double asterisk has to do with the chains. I did see at least one derailment in the course of my running session, which I suspect was down to the chains. I haven't had enough chance to do multiple tests on this. I've certainly seen cases where the chains get caught between the body and the bogie on the radius 2 curves, which is one of the reasons I'd never go there. But I also see a level of strain on the chains, even on a radius 3 curve. So right now I would not really recommend running any sort of speed on radius 2, and even on radius 3 I think you may be borderline, and certainly on radius 4 and greater it's probably not going to be an issue for you. But those chains, I know they really add to the visual aspect of the model, but anything that interferes with the running performance and anything that would risk a derailment, like literally I got that derailment just after doing my speed test on this model, and if it had derailed at top speed I could have ended up with quite a damaged model, and I would not be pleased with that. So hence my double asterisk there. If you don't have those chains on, this thing is definitely a 10 out of 10, but those chains I think may be a problem, so just watch for that. And I certainly would be interested in any feedback from people who have run this in earnest and not just crawled it around their layout, but actually run this thing at any sort of decent speeds and run it on tighter radii, run it over your turnouts, for example, your radius 2 turnouts, which a lot of people would still have, even if they're running primarily radius 3, radius 4 circuits, a lot of people will have radius 2 turnouts. So interested in your feedback on that one. So please give that in the comments. I think jury's out for me on the effect of those chains. I just haven't been running these enough to know whether there's a more pervasive issue there. But I do see a strain. I'm not happy on the radius 2, and on radius 3 I'm kind of 50-50, to be honest. Appearance and detail is a 10 out of 10. These are the most stunning looking Class 55 models that you can purchase, with all the fantastic detail that's on them, particularly in the lower body area. And the upper body is rendered. In a lot of cases, it's not too dissimilar to what was delivered by Bachmann, but you've got this fantastic cab area, you've got the fantastic engine room area now that's been added to augment. I was disappointed about the Royal Scots Grey because of the roof, and I know some other people have been the same. Accurascale have assured me that the grey that they've implemented on the model, they've checked with Class 55 Deltic experts on it, and that is the prototypical colour. It is not a metallic finish. Now, if people know better and want to disagree in the comments, then please leave your comments. But unfortunately, I was disappointed because I was looking forward to the metallic finish on the roof of the Royal Scots Grey. Won't let that hinder my thoughts on the appearance of the range of these models, and they are a 10 out of 10. The sound is a 9 out of 10, and the main reason for that is is really the distortion effect at high volume. You will want to run this model, you will want to run the sound on this at a high level, and unfortunately with the out-of-box speaker configuration you will end up in scenarios where you get a level of distortion. And I know the people from Roads and Rails have been investigating this and looking at the PCB that drives the engine light LEDs, for example, interacting with the actual speaker and causing that distortion, etc. I think, again, the school is out in terms of what the final answers are there, and I think just maybe keep an eye on the Roads and Rails website and any other kind of social media regarding this. I think the sound is very, very good, but I've certainly seen it on at least one of my models. I don't think it necessarily is on all the models, and it may be down to tolerance issues on some models versus others, so it again may not be as pervasive out there, but certainly there's a community of people looking at this right now and trying to come up with an optimal solutions to be able to drive this at the sort of volume level you want to drive it at to get the effect you want. Extras and variants, a 9 out of 10. It's a fantastic selection of variants in the first issue, so no qualms about that, and a lot of capabilities. I am conscious you don't have the DP1, DP2, are not part of the range. You're going to have to hold on to your Bachmann versions of those. I would have liked to see one of the models at least maybe chosen and pre-weathered for all the reasons that I cover in my separate video talking about weathering. I'm not going to go into it here. I'm not going to argue about it here. But I think there are instances where, and certainly the feedback I've seen from my survey is that people would buy a nicely weathered model if they could get one. I think I'd be highly reluctant to do any sort of custom weathering myself on one of these particular models, in which case I would prefer to be able to perhaps get something pre-weathered, but not going to get into it here. It is a gap that Bachmann do have. They've had multiple weather options for their Deltics in the past. I've got one of them. There are others. And I think it probably would be nice to pick one of the representative models and give it a weathering treatment and provide it as an option. But that's it's maybe just my opinion. The build quality and packaging, 9.5 out of 10. I know that some people have complained, and I probably had just seen one instance of it where a couple of issues with some very small parts coming off, and I know that I've seen some more pervasive feedback from other people with that particular. I don't think it's a major problem. I think with a highly detailed model like this, you're going to always get a level of that occurring. I think the packaging in general is very good. I think the one other thing it does miss is the extra support at either end of the locomotive in the packaging that you would have on the Dapple locomotives, for example. They have a piece of expanded polystyrene that sits on both ends of the locomotive as well within the overall polystyrene casing that you have, and I think that is needed for heavy locomotives, because if they do get dropped, they can punch through the actual the kind of ice cube type packaging that's provided. And once that happens, then you're going to have all sorts of nasty damage, particularly to highly detailed models. Really, a very, very small point for the sake of adding those little bit of extra polystyrene pieces would make a difference here. Price value I'll put at 10 out of 10, and that's at the current pricing, 160 for the DCC ready and 250 for the DCC sound fitted, because I do think that's a 10 out of 10 for a model of this quality and capability. Now, I think realistically it might be a challenge to hold that price going forward, and we are in a kind of hyperinflation environment at the moment, fortunately. But certainly I'm well pleased with the price I paid, and I think most people who bought this model, purchased the first range of these models, I think most people are very happy with the price they paid. People might still say £260 for a DCC sound model is still, a fair bit of money. But I think for what you're getting, it is. I think it's well worth that money. I'll just be honest. And I think if you don't want that level of detail, you don't want that level of capability, then you don't have to pay that sort of money and pick up a second-hand Bachmann Class 55, for example, for £100 less than that. And I think you're still getting a pretty good model without having the extra bells and whistles of the Accurascale. So the overall score is a 9.7 out of 10, which is a really, really high score. I think that is the highest score of the year, which is probably not surprising. It's a really, really good score for this particular model. So well done to Accurascale for that. So let's move to the next one. This is my comparison with Bachmann. So I guess on the performance front, the Bachmann Class 55s aren't bad, and performance-wise, I've always found them good, and they really are just a shade behind, I would say, the Accurascale model. They're certainly not bad. They don't have the same weight in the locomotive, for example. Model still does perform very well, and the Class 55s I've always found as good performing models. Appearance and detail is behind. Again, that said, the upper body of the Bachmanns is quite good. The paintwork is good. The glazing is good. And they did a pretty good job across the different representations of Class 55 over the years. The underbody, the engine area, the cab area, the bogies obviously don't have the sort of detail that you're going to get on the Accurascale, and the Accurascale would be very much a kind of best-in-class category for those. Sound is less, and again, the speaker implementation wouldn't have been as good, would have been on an older sound decoder, older sound files, so 2 points behind, and I don't think that's probably overly surprising that we would see that difference, and that's really what you pay for the newer option. Extras and variants, I'm saying the same. The variants have been delivered over the years by Bachmann, and the lighting package on the Bachmann has always been pretty good, because they did have cab lighting from a very early incarnation of these models, as well as the directional lighting. Obviously, again, you do get it doesn't have things like the engine lighting capability. There's no lighted panels, anything like that. So the lighting isn't as good, but it does have things like the DP1 variant. It does have weathered variants of various models, and has had good coverage across the range of 55s over the years. I think Accurascale has caught up very, very quickly, and even on the next release with a couple of more variants and a few more options added, Accurascale should probably outstrip Bachmann on this particular score. Build quality and packaging, again, the packaging is superior on the Accurascale model, and the overall build quality is superior, but the Bachmann isn't bad. So I think these scores aren't bad scores for the Bachmann Class 55. And price value, again, if you can pick up a Bachmann 55 at the right price, and that price would probably be around the 90 to 100 mark for a DCC ready locomotive, and around the 150 to 160 mark for a sound version. Obviously, in good condition, very good condition, running condition and cosmetic condition, then it's still a very nice, attractive offering, in my opinion, and good value. That score reduces with the quality and the price then that you pay. So overall, there is a difference, as you would expect, between these two. The Accurascale is the new kid in town. It's got all the nice new capabilities. It's got the new technology. It's got the superior appearance and detail, and it obviously has the better score. But the existing Bachmann is not a bad model, and I think that's the point I want to make. And some people may rubbish it a bit now when they look at the kind of underbody detail on the Accurascale. But overall, I think as a model, and I've had mine for a number of years now, I've always found them as good, reliable running models. I haven't had any derailment problems with them, and they're sturdy, rugged models, and they've stood the test of time. And I think we've still got to see how the Accurascale model works over time. And I've obviously expressed my concern regarding those bogey chains, for example, in terms of the running performance. So the Bachmann model is a good model and not to be discarded, put it that way. So my recommendation. Accurascale have really delivered what is now the definitive, ready-to-run Class 55 in OO gauge, bar none. There really is no equivalent to it at this point in terms of the performance level and the level of appearance and detail that's been provided. In general, the level of detail being provided here is probably some of the best that you're going to see in OO gauge for ready-to-run models that you can buy anywhere today, and it has been available at a very reasonable price. I think there's a couple of minor items that I've talked about, and I think Accurascale can probably look into maybe some of these, and obviously they'll get some learnings from the first run that they've done, that they can refine the model in the future and get that score even closer to a 10 out of 10. That will hopefully be the case, that they'll look to continuously improve on the model and take any feedback, etc., and look to address any minor items that have arisen. But overall, Accurascale have delivered a real winner here. This is what I'm describing as a must-own model for diesel fans. Maybe you don't quite model the older diesel era, but you could still have this on your layout as a preserved model, for example. I think for a model of this quality, this detail, it's certainly worth, if you're a diesel fan, I think you probably have to get your hands on one of these at some stage. So I have no hesitation in making the Accurascale Class 55 range highly recommended. Superb model, great first UK diesel model offering from Accurascale. I've already got the A-Class from an Irish modelling perspective, which was an excellent model as well. I think this is a better model, again, from the A-Class. It really does give us a lot to look forward to in terms of the Class 37 that's coming, and the other models like the Manor Class and the Class 3031s that are also in the pipeline. I think they should be all superb models as well if they kind of follow the same trend here. Okay, so I really want to get people's feedback in the comments, and so I would welcome if you do own or if you have purchased one of the Accurascale Class 55. What are your thoughts? Have you had any problems with it? What are your feelings on it? If you've already had a Bachmann 55, how do you compare the two of them? Are you going to hang on to your Bachmann 55? Are you going to just replace it, etc.? Really would love to get feedback from people in the comments. I've kind of outlined what I'm going to be doing, which is basically going to do a gradual migration away from the Bachmann 55, but I'm not doing anything overnight. And I'm certainly hanging on to my DP1. I'm not getting rid of that until there's a nice secure Accurascale replacement for it. So give me your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching today's review. Unfortunately, a very long review for today, but I think it's warranted. This has been probably one of the most significant releases of the year, probably talking about a candidate for Model of the Year here. So I think it did deserve the time. And I think it also deserved that comparison with the Bachmann models, because they've been around for a long time. I did a separate video on those a couple of years ago, and I didn't want to, I suppose, let it go without comparing the two, and also still reappraising, revaluing the Bachmann model now in light of the Accurascale release that we now have with us. Okay, thanks for joining today. Hope we see you on the next one, and in the meantime, happy modeling.